this somewhere. So the next item that was on the agenda was to just talk about like project goals for SLSA. It was touched on briefly on the intros, but if people have opinions on what you want out of SLSA and kind of what where to kind of shape where we go. I know Tom on the Google side has some thoughts. I don't know if, I guess we could go first while you think about that. But it'd be good to kind of capture that just to kind of see what people are expecting at the SLSA. Tom?
Yeah, so from my perspective, we have a couple of goals for SLSA. One is that we want to protect all of the software that Google distributes and give our users a way to have confidence in that software beyond just like, well, I got it from Google, so I guess it's fine. We want to give Google confidence in the software that we use and that we include in those products, and give our customers the same ability to protect their software and users. And I think we can get into this a bit more later. Like my primary goal is to prevent tampering as distinct from like vulnerability management. And then further, we would really like SLSA to not just be a set of like compliance checkboxes, but to also be something that can automatically be evaluated at the time of publication and use.
Thanks. Does anyone want to also chime in with their goals for SLSA or how they want to have something to secure their supply chains? Anyone wants to go next?
Can folks hear me now?
Yes, Zach.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So I can cover the intro and our goals right now. So I help community and marketing at ActiveState. We've been building enterprise distros of Python and Perl for about 20 years, but we've been building a supply chain product. And our goal with SLSA is really to try and implement it, but in a turnkey way for others. And we're really excited by SLSA because it describes what we're doing really, really quite well. So for us, it's a product focus.
Anyone wants to go next?
Yeah, I largely agree with what Tom said earlier. At Datadog, we're also interested in being able to tell customers, hey, look, here's an objective framework the whole industry is using. We all agree on the nomenclature and what these levels mean. And we can tell customers, hey, what are you doing to improve your software supply chain? We can tell them, hey, look, we're at level 3, for example, already, since 2018, for example. So having something like this that we can easily communicate to other people is, I think, a fantastic idea. And I especially like the automatically verifiable part. Not just humans, but it's key that machines can evaluate this.
That's great. Anyone wants to go next?
I'm happy to jump on. Donnie, again, from my perspective, we one of our portfolio companies is Package Cloud, which does package deployment for a range of customers. And our perspective is a lot of our customers we've been speaking about it have had concern with dependency and supply chain attacks. And so we're looking at ways we can both technically and otherwise address that. So we were building something similar to SLSA. We saw that, and we think just better to have the community around that. So we're jumping on board with this, and we're taking a look. What are the things that we can add to our product that will actually secure portions of that, and then look at the areas where, kind of like a shared responsibility model. This is stuff that we can do for our customers. This is the stuff that our customers should be doing, and then try to better use that framework to communicate like, hey, this customer is SLSA level 4, so when you download packages from them through Package Cloud, you know the supply chain has been secured. So finding a way, I'm kind of like what Trashanka said about, can you automate? Can an individual with no technical experience validate that the supply chain was secure? Can a computer validate that? Can we just be a little more comfortable and confident when we download stuff that it's not compromised.
Thank you, Donnie. Anyone else wants to go next?
So go ahead.
Go ahead, Joshua. Oh, Michael, you want to go next? Sure.
Oh, okay, sure. So yeah, there's two main use cases from my end. First, from a financial services perspective, it would be great to kind of be able to sort of just attest to certain levels in SLSA and be able to kind of audit against that. That helps us out from a regulatory perspective. But then the bigger one is as part of the sort of CNCF secure software factory or secure supply chain reference architecture and reference implementation. We want to sort of include, it would be great to be able to include SLSA as like a baseline. So when sort of putting that implementation out there, we can say, hey, if you deploy this reference architecture, we would expect you to, very easily hit this SLSA level.
Thank you. Joshua, you want to go next?
Yeah, so when I stumbled across SLSA, the main reason I wanted to get involved is because it provides really tractable, kind of approachable recommendations for securing software supply chain that map quite well to my mental model, only better articulated than I have been able to do, and more comprehensive as well. So I saw a good opportunity to provide a roadmap to kind of ecosystems and projects and also corporations that I wanted to help contribute to.
And thank you for your contributions already as well. Been very active on the SLSA framework GitHub. Thank you. Who wants to go next? Let's see who hasn't spoken. David, yeah.
Some of you already know me. A number of you actually already know me, but I'm interested in this broadly. A lot of folks are using open source software, but there's still some lingering concerns and so on. And I want to harden up the supply chain so that those concerns are allayed, not because they hear some words, but because there's actually things going on to reduce risks.
Great. Let me see who hasn't spoken. Amir, maybe you want to give some thoughts on what you feel?
Sure. So I too am taking a kind of general view at the SLSA framework because we focus on such a individual level on projects and dependencies on an individual level. I think it's really good to take a look and take a step back and kind of look at this from a more macro level. And I think a framework, something like this, is so important, especially in open source software where there aren't a ton of, I guess you could say, standards or things that everyone follows that are easily like auditable or reviewable. So it's definitely a very interesting concept and something I'd like to see how we would be able to apply to our own model of securing software as well.
That's great. And yeah, I want to thank Mark for taking the notes as we all speak. So
thank you so much.
Mark. Let's see who hasn't spoken. Fred, maybe you want to go next?
I think everything was pretty much said, but on my side, it's going to be, baby steps at first anyways. I have great aspirations for, supply chain security. As everybody knows what's going on in the world these days, I think it's incrementally important to start focusing on that. But today, and without shame, I can say that, we're pretty much nowhere. So it's going to be good for us to start with, data provenance and in the later stages, yes, also be able to show our customers that the products we build, meet satisfactory requirements regarding to where the stuff that we used to build our products, is actually the stuff we used to build our products and nothing else.
Great. Maybe Scott, you want to go next and introduce yourself as well?
I missed your initial ask, but I'll introduce myself. So my name is Scott Stroud. I am a technical account manager for Confluent. I focus on, I'm customer-facing role largely for U.S. Department of Defense customers. And if there's any other people kind of in that realm on this call, I am kind of their entourage for doing something called Platform One and Iron Bank. And so my interest in salsa, and this came way of the call you guys had a week or two ago, was to see a lot of that resonated with what Iron Bank does and what their goal are and what Platform One does. So I was just kind of going along for that ride, and also the general interest in the executive order that came out of May for cybersecurity.
Okay. Anyone else that hasn't spoken? Or we have quite a bunch of Google folks. Anyone else wants to add anything that Mark or Tom said? Okay, so before we go to the next agenda item, how many people have actually looked at the? Oh, go ahead, Don. Oh, you were just raising your hand.
Sorry, good to go. Someone was coming in the room. Sorry.
Yeah, so we're just curious, like how many people have looked at the SLSA framework in a little bit more detail. Okay, that's some folks. That's good. Any other thing before we go to the next topic? Okay, the next topic is more about governance. So we have quite a bit of active members or members that want to be active or contribute to SLSA framework. I think it's pretty important to set some type of governance model in terms of how we will make these contributions and how will this become more like an industry standard framework. So we are looking for ideas. We started this job, like Kim created this job. And David, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the SLSA governance document is not public. It's not publicly viewable.
Okay, we'll ask Kim to fix it, but I can give you some high-level overview of the things. So one of the things, let me open that up quickly.
Yeah.
One of the things, can anybody see it other than the Google folks? Oh, Joshua, you can see it. Okay, Tom is presenting it. Can everybody see the screen? So this is a proposal that Kim created, and a bunch of us just left some comments, but we wanted to discuss with all of you and see what you feel like. The first thing there is who should be a maintainer of the SLSA framework. So there are a couple of rules proposed there. So things like they need to collaborate at least once in a 3-month period and attend some of these meetings, provide some feedback. Also, there are things about who will be more like a reviewer or maintainer on these things. So we are open to ideas on how we should do this. We put in some basic things in there. But I was curious if any folks had any thoughts here.
I think one thing that I would just to echo what we've heard from other people so far is that I suspect that we probably want to have some multi-tiered thing of regular changes just require any other maintainer to approve, but any sort of strategic changes require some sort of community contribution. And I think we need to be careful. We don't just want one organization. For example, there's many Googlers here. If 6 Googlers all agree that shouldn't be sufficient to make a major change, right? We want this to be a community kind of project and not just one organization. So figuring out some sort of lightweight structure to make these sort of changes and agree upon it, I think would be good.
Go
ahead, Michael.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say to second what you just said there, Mark. I know from a financial services perspective, it's a hard sell to sort of adopt a framework like that if it's it's mostly one company sort of pushing that. It makes it much easier from an internal governance and compliance standpoint if we show that there's a diverse set of folks from lots of different companies.
Yeah, I also want to echo the same point, which is we want to make sure there is like some representation from every company. And usually I would want to restrict like per company representation to like one person or something, so that we have like good consensus on things. And there are two ideas here. One is either we do like a steering committee with, let's say, 3 companies on board or something like that, or we just say like we will have X number of maintainers, and then the steering committee could be some like small subset of those in some way. But was just curious of any other thoughts people have.
I have a quick thought. In general, I think it's good practice to have like a project lead, so someone that everyone knows is the person to go to if they have questions about something or if they need to be pointed in the right direction. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying, one person should make all the decisions or anything like that, but just having one, or at least, a easily referenceable, leads or people that, if there are any questions or issues, to just go to those people directly, and they could potentially be pointed in the right direction.
That's a good idea. What does everyone think about having a few people? What I'm worried about is one person being the go-to person might be a little bit overwhelmed by the number of requests.
Yeah.
So maybe volunteers if people feel comfortable.
That's where steering committee is a little unbiased too, because if you think of that one person,
that's true. Yeah.
Obviously, we can definitely do that, but it's more about like in the better for the project is to have more like a steering committee kind of thing. But curious for other people's thoughts. Like we can go anyway, like whichever people like.
Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts. First of all, the 3 months before ejecting them is really short. I would say 12, or just stay on until vote off. And the other concern I have is now maybe this will be one of those always super active, so it doesn't matter. But if everybody after a while, hey, we like salsa, we don't really see any changes. This kind of structure easily leads to a situation where there are 0 maintainers because nobody was doing anything for 3 months. So I think you want to have a floor of at least the last 3 on the island stay on. Otherwise, you have a situation where there are 0 people are authorized.
I think Joshua was mentioning 6 months in the chat, so 6 to 12 months sounds fine. Like I think.
Well, 6 months sounds reasonable.
I don't have any experience in other open source organizations. Would it make sense to have, like, aside from just maintainers who could make, vote, make decisions, when there's a disagreement, would it make sense to have like a very small steering committee, like 3 persons or something like that, in order to facilitate resolution of things, not necessarily to like lay down decisions, but like to make agreement? Otherwise, I'm a little bit worried about again, that sort of situation where, like, if we have a lot of different maintainers, it could be hard to make decisions. Like getting 10 people to agree could be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the steering committee idea makes sense, so that it's not just all falling on one person.
I will note that since this is under the OpenSSF, you can just appeal up to the OpenSSF TAC as a steering committee also.
Okay. So we could have like an internal and an external, I guess, if there's an escalation or something.
That might also happen. I'm a little bit worried about the situation of like the OCI.
The OpenSSF. Does the OpenSSF or Linux Foundation have best practices here, or preferred practices?
I'm very sorry, didn't hear that. Can you repeat? Can you repeat, please?
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, you could also send on chat, Zach, if the audio is not coming through.
I'll do that.
Any other thoughts, anyone? Like anyone that hasn't spoken? I'm just curious. Like Joshua, you had any thoughts?
I commented on the doc. I think the steering committee makes sense, like having a subset of the maintainers for decision arbitration is potentially useful. I guess the only concern is trying to put too much structure in place too soon, but it depends how many. Like I know there's also a desire to have diverse participation. So if you can generate that diverse participation quickly, then the additional structure does make sense.
If there are multiple organizations in the steering committee, I think is the key there.
I agree.
And there are smaller things in the docs too, which I think we can get some quick approval here. One is like any change should require at least 2 maintainers to approve. I think this seems okay. I don't think we need steering committee here. This could be more like if, let's say, some maintainers feel like they need to bring it up to steering committee, that's fine. But what do people think? 2 active maintainers. Does that seem okay, or should we do 1 steering member and 1 maintainer, or what do people like?
I mean, if you've got enough maintainers to do that, that's fabulous. I mean, ideally, you'd like multiple 2 maintainers, 2 different organizations would be even better. But the question is, do you have the personnel to do it?
I think Dan commented on here. My inclination is to have some sort of tiered system of like simple fixes and minor changes that just affect clarity but don't affect content. Maybe just require a single review. Any sort of substantive change, especially breaking changes or like new requirements or something like that. I think I would want even more than 2. I would want some sort of community discussion, so it's not just a pull request comes in, 2 people approve it, and then everyone has to change. I suspect it's kind of a judgment call.
Yeah,
so I think
tiered makes sense. Yeah.
Possibly just a cooldown period after pull requests so that they don't get rushed through. Requiring a certain review period may make sense. We've talked about doing similar with the tough specification, where we don't expect changes to just be accepted promptly. You know, we acknowledge that these things take time to think about and reason through. So we'll kind of have a specified period for trying to allow that reflection.
So one example of where I think involving the steering committee would be very helpful would be something like the issue that we saw earlier this week. Like, should we add source control requirements to a lower level? I think that generates a lot of discussion, but then it's not quite clear what like action. And I think that getting consensus within GitHub in a timely manner can be tricky. But if you have a steering committee, you could say what are we going to do about this without it being like just a 2 maintainer situation, which is not probably ideal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in a lot of situations, you need somebody where you say, like, this is where the buck stops. This is where, you know, if we need to move something forward or something needs to happen, sometimes you just need somebody that can, or a group of people that can have that ability to do that. So I'm in agreement there.
Sounds good. So I think there are a couple of things we are hearing here, which is some of the key big items. We will try to discuss it at the SLSA meeting here, just to discuss that thing like before landing it. Simple things can just go through 1 maintainer review, and then like medium-sized changes that don't require discussion, they will require just approval from 2 reviewers from different organizations. Does that sound like a plan? These 3 things.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. How do we determine if something is simple enough for like a simple 2-man review?
Like simple things are typo things, template fixes, those kind of things. Like rephrase some words, add minor sentences for explanation. Those would be
Right.
I would say,
Okay, you really give examples there. Got it. Okay.
and also I would say the steering committee members will make sure all PRs like they are subscribed to, so they can actually jump in if needed, right? Like, so let's say if a maintainer is not doing the right thing, that way they can jump in with stuff. Okay, looks like we're coming to consensus here. Any things we are missing with respect to governance here? Maybe then the next item is looking for those volunteers. Like, so for steering committee, any particular volunteers like that really want to contribute to the spec or want to have a big opinion there?
I mean, I'm happy to help.
Okay.
Whatever works.
You're ready to review some?
I'm certainly interested. We've got a good number of customers that should help give us really practical input here. So we're certainly interested.
Joshua?
Yeah, I'd be interested in participating.
So just to decide on this thing, like there are some criteria you're thinking, right? Like you should have contributed to the spec in some ways and stuff. So I would say definitely we would want one person from Google, right? We started this effort, so we want to make sure like we are developing it the right way. So anyone from Google who wants to volunteer here?
Yeah, I'll volunteer Mark Ladata.
Okay. Okay. And Mark might be going on vacation for a little bit, so we will find another person, but let's keep Mark as the contact. Okay, and I definitely like Joshua because he contributed quite a bit to the spec. So do people have any concerns on having Joshua?
Absolutely not. He needs to be on there.
Okay. So let's see who wants to be that third person. So do people think 3 people on the committee, 4? Like what's the right magic number people like?
My experience is usually a larger odd number. I'm sorry, Christy, I didn't realize.
That's okay. I think you started talking first. Go ahead.
Okay, I think an odd number, but a larger number than 3 is better anyway. If with 3, one person suddenly has to go on vacation and you're down to 2. You don't really want just 3. You want 5 or 7.
Do people think 5 is too much? Like, what do people think?
I just wanted to throw in a comment. So I work on Tecton, and we had, I guess, we have like a governing board, which I think would be similar to the steering committee that you're describing. And we kind of started with sort of like a bootstrap set of people, and there were 5. And then we had rules about like company representation. Anyways, I'd be very happy to share the docs that we use to describe that if you wanted to follow something similar where there's kind of like a bootstrap. And then from there you go into like periods of elections and that kind of thing. If you want to make sure that you've got a situation where you can potentially have, like, another thing is I wonder if you would want to solicit on the mailing list people that are interested as well, just in case they're, I'm just jumping in here. I've never attended a meeting before, so feel free to totally ignore me, but I'm just wondering if you might want to solicit volunteers for this on the mailing list as well, and if you might want to have some rules around like how long these people are going to be in the position for. Anyways,
yes, definitely feel free to share that. And we have 20 members already. Like, this is the first meeting, and I'm crazy excited on the participation here. So I don't really worry on this stuff, but David can always help here, right, David?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll note that I think officially this is the first meeting. So, Christy, by definition, you're here at the first meeting.
I think just to come back to what Christy was saying, I think it does make sense to establish those kind of processes, but we could maybe bootstrap now and establish processes for like re-electing steering committee members from amongst the maintainers or something like that. That's fairly common in my experience with open source. Yeah,
I think that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say you want some process. You want to have minimum viable process, and really what you need is a way to make decisions, including a way to decide how to change it.
And it will be
that's a good point.
Well, it will be a
sorry,
rotation as well. So just FYI, this is not like this is set in stone and nothing changes. This is based on contributions. We will keep revisiting every quarter.
Ah, I see. So the steering committee is rotating.
I think we do the rotation on leads in some working groups, and maybe David can comment more. Like there is rotation on stuff.
There's all sorts of ways, and really it's just a matter of agreeing on something. As I said, what's more important is having a way to make decisions, including how to change, because no matter what you set, you'll find out, oh, I want to change it. And even if it was perfect at one time, you'll change it eventually as things get bigger or smaller. So you just have to
I
have a
agree.
clear way to make
I-
decisions.
That's very wise. Yeah.
Okay, so on this front, is everyone okay with 3-member steering committee or 5-member? Like just to keep the things odd. And all that.
I would suggest larger. You've got the people, and as I said, if you only have 3, one goes on vacation, you're down to two people who can disagree. It's if you're gonna have a steering committee at all, then that creates a problem.
Okay, let's do 5. I think some people are saying 5 because it doesn't get too big too, like to make decisions harder and other things. So let's do 5. Okay, so we have 2, and then David as the third one. David is the perfect neutral one to have in the mix. So is everyone okay with David being the third one?
Yep.
Some thumbs up. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see who else wants to be like more involved in the spec. Like we need 2 more volunteers.
I'm happy to volunteer on behalf of Datadog if no one disagrees.
Okay, let's have.
And I'm happy to volunteer myself on behalf of Intel. Bruno.
Okay.
Great.
Is everyone okay with having Bruno on the panel?
Sounds good.
Perfect. So we have 5 people. Great. Thank you. Any concerns on this process and things?
So I had one question. We discussed having diversity of who the vendors were that were on these committees. And I apologize if there's any on the call, but I mean, I'd be curious if there was any like non-commercial entity people that are in this organization, because I mean, I'd kind of like that diversity as well, be it, academics or government or something like that.
We can definitely do that. David is definitely one. The unbiased.
Well, I do represent a nonprofit, which is not now. It's a a commercial. It's a group of commercial organizations, but I'm not. I technically an academic because I teach 2 classes as a side, but I don't think I would normally be classed that way. But I think it's more of the multiple organizations that's key. If we can have people from governments or academia, awesome. But I think it's more just multiple organizations, and we'll already start to represent multiple different perspectives.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mike.
and and I was just gonna say, obviously I'm working at a private company, but I'm still also representing the CNCF. But I would also like to see, and I can check from my side for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation to see if we can get some folks who are specifically working for them.
Actually, I would love to also have some CNCF representation.
Yep.
So,
Just to add, I happen to work with some CNCF projects, so I don't know if that counts.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I'm the architect of the secure supply chain CNCF stuff.
Michael, would you like to be on the steering committee as well? Like we can
bump to 7.
want to substitute for Mike?
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Love it.
But that makes us 6. So anybody who wants to give up to have Michael on this committee? I don't know, Trishank, do you feel comfortable? Like, I also want to make sure we contribute to the spec as well. So it doesn't need to be a decision now. Like maybe for the next 2 weeks, we see like some people who can actually contribute to the spec and make the decisions on, let's say, those last 2 members or something. But I'm just curious for thoughts. Anyone else has thoughts?
Sorry, the audio is a little hard to follow. Could someone put the actual list in the notes?
Yes, I think the list is in. I just bolded it right now. It's kind of like buried in the middle.
I think we have someone else, right? Instead of Zach, I think. Let me just confirm the list. So we have David, Joshua is there, right? Okay. Zach, okay.
Oh, you forgot to include my name, Bruno from Intel.
Oh, right. I think instead of Zach, we had Bruno. I think.
Yeah.
Really, I'm still interested.
Oh, yeah.
So I like, for what it's worth, I like Abhishek's idea of like, let's put interest on there. And sure, number of seats are limited with the expectation that it's rotating. We don't all have to serve right now. And I think we can revisit this at the next meeting and finalize. Does that sound good? Or do we need a committee right now?
So on that idea, we can actually put 7 right now. And over the next 2 or 3 weeks, as people contribute, we shrink it down to 5 or something. How does that sound amount on the? So we will add actually Michael and Bruno there. Mark, can you add that? Thank you. Great. Any other questions on this before we move forward? Does this sound good to everyone, the governance model? Any concerns, questions? Okay, let's see. The next item, I don't know who put in there. This is how do we want to track interest outside of GitHub issues?
Feel free to skip. I thought one kind of brief topic was like, if anyone had thoughts or experience on like how to track interest in this. Like we have the mailing list, like everyone here found the community meeting, but there's not really a way right now to just kind of give like positive feedback of like, yes, this sounds good, or like keep track of who's using it. So like if you just look at the commit history, it's like lopsided based on the people who are making the changes. But if organizations look at this and say, yes, it looks good, I'm also going to use it without actually making changes because they don't have any changes to make, it might be good if we had some way to keep track of that. I know
Mark, help me understand this better. You want to track people who are using or are planning to use? Is that when you say interest, that's what you really mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to use really at the moment, right? Like this is an in development standard.
You could take that document and say, okay, this is how we're going to change our processes internally.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess like it's just keeping like looking at the mailing list. And another, because I forget who said this. Someone said like if you look like, it's important to look at this and see that it's not just a one company thing, but a kind of an organization that represents multiple stakeholders. Kind of a way to represent that, even if a lot of the changes are just coming from one organization. It might look lopsided when in reality, if people are just reviewing, the reviews themselves are valuable, right? And if they're using it, it might not be represented just in like the commit history, for example.
Yeah, so you can track GitHub contributions to a project where like GitHub's API lets you pull out people that are commenting on issues or creating issues and reviewing pull requests and things. So you can get all of that data and surface it in the README or something. The tracking adoption is a fairly standard open source problem where people don't necessarily talk about the projects they're using, and then 10 years later you find out that one of them's been to space or something. And I think that's doubly so with security related things. People don't want to say, oh, we didn't have good security practices, but now we do. So there might be a problem with like identifying adoption outside of contributions, I think. But an increasingly normal way to do it is have like a repository where people submit user stories that's kind of opt-in. And that's what Sigstore have done with their Friends repository. But I also think there aren't any. Oh no, sorry, I lied. There's only one person one organization that's contributed to that repository so far in sort of 2 months. So I would expect that to be a fairly quiet. Yeah, that's just my kind of expectation. But.
With that said,
with how the framework is structured, wouldn't organizations want to make public statements, especially those that ship software publicly, about SLSA compliance?
I think that would be amazing to have, which is like people publicly vouching for SLSA in their products, and especially in their open source projects, right? And ideally, it could be even a transparent level, like no matter what the state is, it's more like it will get improved over time, but it would be nice to have people transparent about it.
If I can make a couple comments, wouldn't people always announce if they're doing it? Not necessarily. Most software developers don't develop products for the public, for like public sale. If you're doing contract work or work for a particular organization or developing software within a company, there's no reason. If anything, it's a negative because somebody might say, well, you're not doing it well enough or whatever. So, you might quietly do it without making anything public. The other issue is that you might evaluate potential products without, independently of whether you apply it yourselves. In other words, gee, I really like it that they're using SLSA. And I'm not sure I would call that adoption in the same sense. But it's certainly, if somebody says we prefer to buy products or use products that comply with SLSA, that's a signal I think a lot of people here would like to know.
Yeah, on that note, the CNCF has done a pretty good job at sort of, and maybe the larger OpenSSF can do this, around sort of like reaching out to the constituent members to see who is adopting this. And another thing, just to kind of, if I put my day job hat on for a second, from my perspective, like, you'll never get a financial services company to explicitly, publicly state this, but you might be able to pseudonymously attest to it. We, might be able to say multinational bank X, uses SLSA in this way, without explicitly calling it out. So that's another thing. But to also reiterate David's point, yeah, like there's definitely something, if we end up adopting SLSA, we would also somewhat want the world to know we are looking at evaluating artifacts based on the SLSA framework, because that then helps out, when vendors come in, they recognize, oh, we need to start, building our stuff regarding, within that framework. Otherwise, banks are not going to buy it.
Any other thoughts on this?
I don't know. You guys seem like you're kind of identifying two different use cases. One is like, how can you get logos for SLSA's advantage? And then how can you make SLSA the logo for the customer? They're two different use cases. And ideally, it's a chicken and egg and it happens. But
I just got a random idea, by the way. Have you all thought about, maybe this doesn't happen right now, but maybe there's a certification process that some companies might be interested in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Trishank, this is Donnie. That's something we've talked about, actually. Again, we're on the package deployment world. So what we have thought of doing is, like we can kind of like a shared responsibility model, like I mentioned earlier. We could say, hey, our company will take care of all these elements of the supply chain process. This is stuff that we can't do, you need to do, but we can audit you. We can go through it with you and then say, okay, we've now reviewed that you're a company that we deploy packages for. We can say, hey, here's a SLSA stamp if Google's okay with that or the community is okay with that. And we just say, like, we have audited this company to SLSA level 3, and they can put on their website when they download package from us, it'll say this element of the supply chain have been verified and audited. But I think there's potential there to say certain groups or certain companies or certain people can do that stamp and say we've audited you to SLSA 2 or SLSA 3 to give some degree of a comfort level across the group. We have to think about how we do that, right? Because if there's no standards, then I can just say, hey, I think you're good, but we want to make sure that it's reputable across the whole community, right? If Datadog does something, or Package Cloud, or a nonprofit, or just some guy with a SLSA certification steps in as a former SOC 2 auditor, we should have some idea on how we would do that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I will say that, I run the CI best practices badge. We very much encourage people to put, basic a little badge on their GitHub site where if they meet, and in our case, actually, it's automatic, and it's a somewhat different system. But if they meet it, they get a badge. If it turns out that they falsified a claim, we can remove it. And we haven't had, to be honest, we haven't had too many problems. The problems have been more of misunderstanding or some such. But there's a few bad apples, but many really are trying to meet the criteria, and it's a matter of clarifying things. But having something to show for, I worked, and oh look, I got an A. It's actually pretty motivating for a lot of folks. They want the ones who want to do something good want to have a way to show it.
Yeah, and we have similar projects like these, right? Scorecards as well is more like a way to show that kind of scoring or risk compliance and other things, right?
Also, as risk for individuals, driving security for organizations can be a bit high. It's nice to have something to say, we did a good job on this, because your stakeholders usually can't tell.
And that's exactly why we have levels, right? It's not like you have to just achieve that ideal state. We want to have those intermediate things speak about the security posture as well. So we have just 3 minutes left. Let's just quickly run into this next question, which is a pretty high level question. I think maybe Mark, you put in there, which is what should be or what shouldn't be a part of the SLSA framework.
Can I put a pin in this? I think there's no way we can answer these questions in 3 minutes.
Okay.
Is that fair? I think these are too important to try to do in 3 minutes. Let's instead talk about our next meeting, and then we can give that the time it deserves. What do you think about that?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, so
I wonder if it's even sorry. I wonder if that discussion even makes sense for a meeting, or if it's something like we should handle offline somehow.
I think we can do a lot offline and then have an in-person discussion too. But I believe our next meeting is on the 25th, right?
Yes.
So what I'd propose is, why don't we have that discussion offline, issues, email, whatever, and then come back to that question on the 25th, where hopefully our positions, either it's resolved or it's not resolved, and we can discuss it.
Sounds good. Any other last minute things? Any other last minute questions or things?
Yeah, push that to action items for next time, though. Don't just kill that entirely. I think that is a valid discussion. Yeah, next time. Excellent. Perfect. Love it.
So I definitely encourage the steering committee members and others to check out the SLSA spec, file any issues to start discussions. It's a community developed framework, so we really encourage all of you to take a look there. And next time when we meet, we could have some nice discussion topics.
Perfect. Thank you, Abhishek.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Great first meeting.
Discussion. Yeah, great discussion today.
See you all in 2 weeks.
Thanks. Have a great day, folks.
Thanks all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.